Trident. Okay. Hello and welcome back to Raise the Trident. My name is Jake, and today we're going to be doing another interview. This time, who is a pretty prominent member, I would say, of the Mariners content creator space. He's co-host of Locked On Mariners, which is the largest fan-hosted Mariners podcast. So today we are talking to Colby Patnode. Welcome back to the channel. Today, no game show to screw you over this time. We're just talking about kind of your background, so I think it's going to go a lot easier. But how's your night been going, or how's your day been going?
Uh, Pretty good, don't want to lose sight of the big picture here. Ichiro was inducted into the Hall of Fame,
Yep.
so try and focus on that instead of the one idiot who decided he's going to prove a point and then not tell people what the point is. But
Yeah.
yeah, so Ichiro's in the Hall of Fame. Secured my tickets for the jersey retirement. So
Nice.
all things considered, baseball wise, I'm doing fine. I sure could go for like a Jerry DePoto move right now.
Hmm.
Hopefully that's tomorrow. And you know, there's some interesting things happening behind the scenes, and I hope that one of those things comes to fruition because I'm just like everybody else. I'm just please do something.
Okay, so have you like been hearing things and hearing little, murmurs here and there? Because I know last
Um,
year you and Ty and Ben and Jage were tweeting out the eye emojis and whatever right before. I don't know if it was Garver or something else. I don't know which one it was.
it was I think specifically that one was the day they traded for Haniger and Rayleigh.
Yep.
We got clued into that about an hour before. Um, all we knew is that they were getting Haniger back and that they were going to make a second trade, or they were supposed to. We didn't know any of the details about Rayleigh until it got announced or anything like that. And then we had like a really slow play on the Polanco day. We got told they were making a trade that day, so we probably tweeted something about that. And then we didn't know for what though. And then we got told it's an American League Central team, and then we got told it was the Twins a little bit after that. So it was kind of a slow build day on that. But yeah, no, this is nothing like too specific, and it's nothing that hasn't already been out there. Like it's just like you got Kramer's article today talking about some of the moves they tried to make that they didn't or they couldn't. But yeah, it's just a lot of players being linked, and the Mariners seem pretty. I don't want to say sure, but they seem pretty confident that they're going to get something of substance done, like bigger than Donovan Solano. But I mean, like obviously they need two or three of those things, but it does seem like they're working and they're being aggressive in trade talks as well relative to what they think they're being aggressive in trade talks. But as far as I know, it's still centered on prospects, not trading their pitching. So I'm sure other teams would probably say the Mariners aren't being that aggressive because they're not shopping Wu and Miller. But I mean, it's all, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But I do think they're being pretty aggressive with their prospects and trying to get specifically, you know, the middle of the order bat that they need. So I think they'll, I think they might get something done there, but have to wait and see. You never know.
Yep.
You talk about 99 things, or you talk about 100 things, 99 of them don't come to fruition, and you hope you get the one that does. You hope is right.
Yep, fair enough. Well, we're going to be dropping this on Wednesday evening, so it's
Mhm.
possible that something might be done right before this. And in that case, then hey, you kind of got the scoop from here, maybe. I don't know, or if it happens like Thursday,
I'm
then
not going
there
to
you
claim
go.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to claim that, but
Still
yeah,
would be cool, but hey, I mean we're all clamoring for a move here, but
yeah.
since we've all talked about Donovan Solano and we've talked about all that stuff ad nauseum at this point today, we're going over more about you in particular, and because last year when I kind of started the channel and did some of my you love to see it podcast stuff, which you named or you graded the name of that like a 30 grade, which appreciate it. I thought long and hard about that. Hopefully raise the Tridents a little bit better of a grade this time. But at the time I wanted to kind of go over people's backgrounds, especially to people in the creator space, to kind of get to know them more, how they
Mhm.
got into the Mariners, how they got to where they're at now and why they do what they do. So, and today I thought, we're going to go over Colby Patnode. I'm sure people are interested because I would say that, you know, you're probably one of the more polarizing figures in the creator space, at least on Twitter, for people. So
Sure.
that's why I think it's really interesting to get into it. So first, I guess starting all the way back in the beginning, when and why did you become a Mariners fan?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I actually pretty much know like dead on. Like most people, like, oh, when I was a kid and blah blah blah. But it was 2001. It was late spring, early summer. So one thing about me is that I'm a bit of a, I believe the technical term is serial obsessive. So like once I get into something, I'm all in, right? And so I was seeing 2001. I was 9 years old, and my parents went to sign me up for soccer, but they were late, and all the spots filled up. And so they asked me if I wanted to play baseball. And I was like, I mean, I guess I'll try it. I never played before. And I was terrible. I was so bad, but I really liked it and I got better at it. And so, yeah, that just kind of became my thing in 2001. And it happened to coincide with the Mariners having the best regular season in history, and obviously, a big part of that was Ichiro. So yeah, it's kind of fitting that today is that day. But yeah, it was 2001. If we had been a little bit earlier to the signups, I might be a huge soccer fan. But as it is right now, I don't really care for soccer that much. I don't dislike it. It's just not my cup of tea. And I'm a big baseball fan. And so, yeah, just starting to play baseball in 2001. And then, hey, the Mariners are pretty good. And then, hey, Ichiro's like the most popular player on the planet right now. And that all just kind of, came together at the right time. So yeah, it basically poor timing on the part of my parents led to this awesome thing. So it's funny how things work out.
For sure. And so would you say Ichiro is kind of like your top Mariners player of all time, or would you give that to someone else?
No, love Ichiro, but actually pretty early on, I glommed onto Edgar Martinez. Was my favorite Mariner. I didn't know really anything about the history of Edgar. I was 9 years old. I
Hmm.
was born. I was alive in '95, but I wasn't paying attention. I didn't care. But no, it was Edgar was always the guy that I kind of glommed onto. He was a right-handed hitter. He was slow, like I was. We both wore number 11. I didn't pick it for any special reason. That's just the number that was given to me. And then it became the number I wore my entire, baseball career, if you want to call it that, because Edgar was my favorite player. So Edgar was always my favorite. Still is to this day. He's my favorite Mariner. So yeah, it was actually Edgar. Most of the kids it was probably Ichiro, but I really liked Edgar right away for some reason.
Okay. Gotcha. And so you ended up starting to play baseball at that time and you played through high school. So can you kind of give
Mhm.
me high school Colby Patnode kind of scouting report on him? Like, I mean, there is a
Sure.
picture out there of you pitching. So I'm assuming you pitched
Oh,
I
is
don't know if
there?
you, yeah. So I don't know if you pitched too much or what, but yeah, what's the
Um,
scouting report on high school Colby Patnode?
yeah, coolest kid in school, of course.
Okay.
Tons of friends. A lot of 16-year-olds love digging into baseball and fantasy football as much as I did back then. So
Yep.
pretty easy to make friends that way. But yeah, still very slow. I was a right fielder mostly. I had a pretty good arm. So do that, and then I didn't have much power. I was just slapping the ball around, which isn't a great combination when you're slow. It's kind of a
Yeah.
Luis Ariz situation. But I did have a pretty good arm. So they stuck me in the outfield. And then, yeah, I pitched a little bit, not so much in my high school career, but over the summers, I threw a ton of innings and all that stuff. Probably should have forced the issue on the pitching thing. I was okay. I think I topped out, 82 at the very high end miles per hour. Probably sat mostly, like 76, 78, somewhere in that range. And I only threw a fastball. Like it was the only pitch I had a four seamer, two seamer, and dabbled with a cutter, but I just threw the fastball. I guess I threw from a pretty funky arm angle. At least that's what I was told. It was kind of a short arm, but not exactly a short arm. It was kind of three quarters, but not exactly. I don't know. I was told it was weird. It was hard to pick up the baseball. And so I had some success pitching. I did pitch in 3 innings in my high school varsity career, 3 innings. And I like to tell people I had the lowest ERA in school history because I didn't give up a run in those 3 innings. So
Nice.
yeah, I was the nerd. I was the bench player. Um, would get to play a lot in the summers, and then just kind of be a part time player in the like for the actual high school team. And decided after my senior year I didn't want to play Legion ball or anything like that. And then I hopped straight into coaching after that instead. So
Hmm.
yeah, played through high school, didn't play any college or anything like that. No, not super high end baseball. uh, High school baseball was good. Like the region we're in, Central Washington, there's a lot of really good high school baseball in this part of the state. But yeah, I wasn't out there competing most of the times with like the really good players. So I would say I was probably about an average high school baseball player.
Okay. You said you pitched from a kind of a weird short arm slot, so kind of like a
Mhm.
Trent Thornton type arm slot, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it. Like I said, it's kind of tough to describe because for me, it's just where I threw the ball. Like it
Hmm.
just where my arms slotted. But yeah, I had a lot of success with the fastball, and got a lot of pop ups and stuff. Like I think maybe my ball didn't, like dip as much as others did, so I had some rise, quote unquote, to it. But yeah, it just kind of, I pitched in little league and then I didn't pitch for like 4 years, and then one summer, like my sophomore or junior year, they're like, "Hey, you have a decent arm. You're going to pitch for us today." No idea what I'm doing, just throwing the fastball, never learned another pitch, and I was getting out. So they just kind of rolled with it. But in summer ball, eh, you don't really care. You're just trying to cover innings.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I had some success on the mound. Uh, and like I said, I got told that it was a little hard to pick the ball up, or there was something about the ball that I threw. And my assumption is because I got a lot of pop ups, it just didn't drop as much as other fastballs did. I don't know if that's high spin rate or what. I don't know. Right. Like I never really dug
Hmm.
into it that much, but yeah, it was kind of a pushy, like three quarters arm slot. So yeah, kind of Trent Thornton ish, maybe Cutter Crawford ish type of delivery, I guess.
Okay. And yeah, and after high school, you moved into coaching. So what motivated you to keep on with the baseball in person and do coaching?
Yeah. Loved baseball. Uh, it was basically, do I want to spend, thousands of dollars over the summer to sit on the bench and hang out with, um, some of my teammates, but it was a regional team, Pepsi Pack, go Pack. But do I want to do that, or do I just want to move on? And I decided I wanted to coach. My high school coach knew that I really liked baseball, obviously, and I was like a student of the game, even though I could do everything up here. I couldn't quite outsource it very well to my limbs, but I studied it. I was into statistics and stuff like that, even in high school. And so he asked me if I was going to play that summer, and I said no, I don't think so. And he said, okay, how about coaching? Do you want to coach? And I said, sure. I'd give it a shot. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do or if it was going to go well for me. But yeah, that first team, I coached my first game the day after I graduated high school. It was just 13-year-old summer league team, 13 and 14-year-old kids, and had a lot of fun. So I decided to try it again the next year, kind of branch out on my own, and I ended up doing that for I want to say 8, 9 summers, and then about 4 years into that, I started coaching little league, like 10, 11, 12-year-old little league on top of seventh grade baseball. And then I would do the summer baseball. So from, March until late July, I was at the fields, the local fields pretty much every day of the week for one thing or another. But yeah, I just had a lot of fun with it. And so, yeah, it's basically just, do you want to try coaching? sure, I guess I'll give it a shot. And it ended up working out.
Okay. And can you tell me a bit about an incident while you were coaching where you were upset with a call? Instead of doing a Lupinella tirade, you chucked a baseball into the neighboring empty field. And when confronted about that by a parent, you told them to sit down.
I don't know if I told him to sit down. I can't remember. This was my like second year coaching and my first year during school ball.
Mhm.
Also, the last year I was the head coach of the school ball team, so I might tell you a little bit. Um, I don't think I've told that story since I was on like the Winning Youth Coaching podcast or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were playing Sela, which is like our big rival.
Mhm.
Seventh grade baseball, you're not supposed to have rivals, but when you're 19, you're stupid. So yeah, call didn't go our way. Like it was one of those calls where it's like very clearly like, hey, the 24-year-old umpire who's probably a little bit hungover still wasn't paying attention and he missed the call in a close game. And so, I didn't want to be yelling at the umpire, right? So I just picked up a baseball from our bucket and I just chucked it into the empty lot that was next to the baseball field. And one of the parents was like, like one of our parents said something to the effect of like, "That's not setting a very good example," or whatever. And I was just like, "I don't care what you think." Turns out that guy's on the school board. So, yeah, not great timing on my part. And obviously, it's one of those things I cringe at now because it's like it's seventh grade baseball. Like it's really not that
Yeah.
serious of a thing. But again, you're 19. You think this like I was one of those guys. I tried to keep track of like my record as a coach until I was like 20. So like my first 3 years, I was trying to keep. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you being such a tool? Who cares? It's seventh grade baseball. So yeah, at that point, I'm like, yeah, just gonna have fun. But yeah, first couple years, there was rough. Not nearly as rough as my assistant coach, who is was one of my best friends when I played. He was he was fiery. Like you think I'm fiery. He was pretty fiery. He is actually the one who got tossed out of a game. I never got tossed. So as mad as
Okay.
I never got tossed from a game. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's cringy and you're like, "Ugh," but at the same time, it's like, I'll cut myself some slack. Again, I was 19, 20, something
Yeah.
like that. And like, whatever, it's seventh grade baseball. Who cares? But yeah, it's one of those learning moments, teachable moment. And as it turns out, that the guy who like yelled at me, his grandson, was the one who was like, he was on the team. There's a whole backstory there, or whatever. He was one of my favorite kids that I coach, and I ended up coaching his little brother a few years later. And that guy and his son, obviously the player's dad, they were big supporters of mine when I started doing little league and all that stuff. So ends up working out, just fine. But
Hmm.
yeah, obviously not one of my prouder moments. But hey, like I said, I never got tossed, so
Yeah.
I,
Sure.
I hang on to that.
Fair enough. So, coaching ends up ending for you at a few years after that, I assume. And then, when does kind of the writing come into play here? Because I know you started at Sodo Mojo, but was there anything before then, or was Sodo Mojo kind of like the first place where that started?
Sure. So I stopped coaching. Uh, Boy, I don't know when I stopped coaching. I had some success. Little League Juniors is what it's called. It's 13, 14, 15 year olds. We went to regionals. We were 2 wins away from going to the Juniors World Series. Uh, and so we had some success there. Great group of kids, loved it. Tried to do it again the next year with a different group. Just didn't really quite feel the same. I was kind of more of an outsider with that group of parents, and then I did it for a couple more years after that. But I think at that point I could tell, like, I like coaching. This is fine, but I'm starting to see a lot of the politics that are involved with youth coaching that you wouldn't think are a thing, but they absolutely are, unfortunately. And so, I started to think like, hey, I want to do something baseball related. How do I, like, what's the logical step here? And so it became, writing, and I think it was summer, or I think it was winter of 2016. I had tried like a few things before, but never had the follow through. And I'm pretty sure it was winter of 2016. Might be off a year, but I started a just a blog on, I think the website is literally called sportsblog.com.
Nice.
And you could actually get like a little bit of money per clicks. And I was like, oh, I'll give it a shot, see what happens. I ended up only writing like two or three things there, and that's when at the time the site expert is what Fansided called him, the guy who runs Sodo Mojo at the time. He asked me if I wanted to come write for him because I found out later why he was so desperate for writers. But yeah, so I decided to give that a try, and uh, it was easy. I didn't get paid anything, but I didn't have to run the website. I could write whenever I wanted and do all that stuff. So I just started doing that. And that's how I got started. I think it was winter 27, like the off season between 2016 and 2017 is when I started to write pretty seriously at Sodo Mojo for Fansided, and then not quite sure when I jumped roles, but yeah, I started the winter of like seriously doing it like on a pretty regular basis. Probably the winter of 2016 to 2017, like that off season. I remember one of my first articles I wrote was like the Gerard Dyson trade, if I'm not mistaken. So it was whatever off season that was. I'm pretty sure that was between 16 and 17.
Yeah, so your first article specifically that I could find was December 28th of 2016. I
Okay.
believe it was actually a prospect, like a top 10 prospect thing, and you did like a little series on that. But you
Okay.
ended up writing hundreds of articles for Sodo
Yeah, I did.
Mojo. So it took me quite a while to scroll through all of them to see what the first one was. But then you also ended up becoming the site expert at some point. So
Yeah.
how did that come about?
Yeah, so the guy who brought me on, he jumped ship after like 6 months or so, and then I don't even remember who all was the site expert was there, but it's not something I wanted to do. Like I didn't want the responsibility, which didn't turn out to be much. But I was like, hey, I just like that I can write whenever. And at the time, I still had a job that I was working as well, so I just didn't want to do that. But I do remember. Will Stone, who Mariner fan, worked for the Memphis Grizzlies, graphic designer, worked for the Grizzlies. He worked for I don't know where he works now, NASCAR. Like I know he worked for a driver, like on their graphics team. Worked for the Orioles. He was a site expert for a couple months, and then he just didn't like it. And then I got to a point where like there was literally nobody to edit the articles and send them out. And so I was like, I guess I'll do it. Um, and so I applied for it. They gave it to me, and it was a pretty pretty serious reality check. I think my first month as the site expert was December of 2018, maybe August 28, something like that. It was pretty late, and I was basically the only one on staff. So I was writing, and the fan site had some really rough rules. They were going to pay you as a site expert. They expected you individually to write 25 articles a month,
Jeez.
and so I did that, and it was hard to do that by myself, only to find out that that was just like your expectation, but not necessarily a hard rule.
Okay.
The rule to be eligible to get paid for your views and whatnot was you had to put out 50 articles a month as a website, and so I mean that's obviously that's almost two a day, and it was just me. So yeah, I didn't even get paid for quite a while
Mhm.
after I took over. But like I said, I didn't have to maintain the website or anything. I could just write, and I learned a little bit about SEO, and it was fine. Eventually, added some more writers. The goal really was at the time to expand Sodo and make that kind of like the new thing, and maybe even compete with like the lookout landings. And we ended up getting some pretty talented people on staff. Tyler Wiki, who writes for the Tacoma News Tribune, he was on the staff for a while. Uh, Colton of Mariner Mojo with what's the other guy's name? He
I
was
don't
on the
remember.
staff for yeah, Jeffrey or something.
Yep.
He was on the staff for a while, and then obviously Ty would join us later. So we got to a point where like we were doing it pretty consistently. But yeah, it was a rough go for a couple months until I could build out a staff. And the real frustrating thing is that I really wanted to pay them, but I wasn't making any money, and the money I did make was like nothing. So like it just became, a real tough situation where, it's hard to ask people to do something for free. And so, yeah, it is what it is. But I became the site expert, I think, in 2018, I want to say. And then uh, Colton was on the staff, or he might have been on the staff with me before I became site expert. Tyler was on the staff. He was pretty good. And then Ty decided to ruin my life and hop into the chat. So,
Yep. So have to ask, you're the one who basically hired Ty to
yeah,
start writing for the Mariners, which,
I did.
is probably not common knowledge, but yes, you hired him, and that's how we've gotten to where we're
Mhm.
at now. But yeah, just how talk about meeting Ty, what that was like at the start, and kind of how you guys grew to be as close as you are now.
Sure. So, for the record, I've never met Ty. We've never been in the same place. We've never even been in the same
That's crazy.
state.
Wow.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have never met. So, every year we're kind of like, maybe this is the year. And again, this year we actually talked about this on the Patreon show today. I don't know how much he kept in because Ty does the editing of our Patreon show, but yeah, we've never seen each other, and so he's kind of planning a big trip at some point. We just don't know when it's going to be, and so that'll be fun. And I know Ty really wants to do like meetups and stuff like that. We
Ichiro
joke all
Weekend is the most obvious
I
choice.
mean, yeah, I would say so. But he's got some, stuff in Canada he's got to take care of. Ty lives in Canada,
Yep.
and so it's a little bit more than just hopping on a plane to get over to Seattle and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, maybe it might happen this year. I don't know. He can't rule it out, just can't confirm it. But yeah, we've never met. We've never met before in person. But yeah, he was just basically, when you need 50 articles a month to get paid, you take pretty much anybody who's willing to write for free. You just take them, right? And so Ty was hired out of necessity by me, and he worked pretty hard for like the first month. That's it,
Okay.
and then he coasted. But at the time, I think I had done, I don't know, one or two like podcasts for Sodo Mojo, and I'd kind of decided like I want that to be a big part of our website is the podcast. And Ty DM'd me and he's like, "Hey, are you looking for like a co-host for the podcast?" And I was just like, didn't want to say no, basically.
Okay.
But I was like, "No, not really, but like if you want to try it, sure." And so we did a podcast together. It was terrible. Like it's still out there. You can find it. Ty and I pulled it up like I don't know, like last year, our first podcast on Sodo Mojo together. It is terrible. Like it is not just like the content, but like the audio quality and all that. Like it's god awful. So we've come a long way since then. I'm pretty sure we were both using the laptop mics.
Okay.
Uh,
Yep.
yeah, or maybe like the earbud mics. So like yeah, it was terrible. It's out there. Like it's out there. You guys can find it with very little effort. And then like he basically was like, hey, so I know that like most fan sided websites, they have like two site experts. And I guess the reason they do that is because if each one of you writes 25, you're eligible. Uh, what was frustrating about that was that fan sided made you split the money. There were two of you. So basically, the way it works at Fansided, and I don't know how it works now. They they actually got sued for not paying guy blah blah blah. But at the time, what it was is you get $1.50 for every 1,000 views you generated. And when Ty asked to do it, I really didn't want him to because now I was only going to get 75 cents for every 1,000. But again, I didn't really want to say no. So it's like, I mean, I guess like, yeah, fine. I wasn't too thrilled about it, but it did work out where we were both writing a ton. So we met the threshold often, and shared the responsibility of the socials and all that, and started doing pretty regular podcasts together. So yeah, it was pretty much accidental. Like I didn't know Ty before he applied. I don't even remember if he like DM'd me or if he like just sent in a random application. But yeah, like no self-respecting website would have hired Ty, but I wasn't a self-respecting website yet. So I I gave him a shot and he just kind of, you know, clawed his way into my space essentially and stole half my money from everything and did less than half the work. And I respect that. So I guess
Yep.
that's how we we ended up becoming friends. Although I wouldn't say we actually became like friends until he got us fired.
Okay.
Uh, be, I mean, like for I don't think Ty has had my phone number for more than like 2 years now. Like we just used
Hmm.
to DM each other on Twitter
Okay.
until like the last couple of years. So,
I feel like we
uh,
need the story of the firing at this point. If he, how
oh,
did
okay,
he get you fired?
sure. So Ty and I, like initially, what like bonded us or whatever is that we were both super invested in the rebuild, and we agreed that that was like that's what we should be about is the rebuild, the player acquisition. That should be what we focus on and all of that. So, and that's what we built Sodo on is essentially the rebuild. Our last 2 years there, we ended up with more than 2 million views each of those years, and that was huge for a fan sided website. You wouldn't know it by looking at what we got paid, but yeah, it was a big couple of years, and it was working very well for us. Well, then 2020 happens, the pandemic hits, right? And obviously, you know, there was a lot of social movements at the time, and I wanted to write an article about the BLM protest in Seattle and how it related to like Seattle athletes like JP Crawford and Justin Dunn. And like at the time, the Mariners had like the most African American players like on their roster, on their 26-man roster of any team in baseball. And I was like, that's pretty topical then. So like, let me write about that. And Fanside had told me I couldn't. Like, you're not allowed to write about that. Um, and they more or less use the line like all lives matter type of thing. And I was just like, whoa, like, I mean, it's one thing like stick to sports was their big thing. Like, yeah, no, that's not sports related. And it's like it kind of is. And by the way, there is no sports happening right now. Like, what do you want us
Yeah.
to write about? There's no sports going on right now because we're in a pandemic. So basically it was, you know, they told us to stick to sports and I didn't like I hate being told stick to sports, you know, because sports in the grand scheme of things, really not that important. And obviously there were a lot bigger things going on at the time. And I thought I had found a neat way to kind of like connect the local sports teams to these, you know, protests and to these movements. And you remember the Mariners were pretty outspoken about all that stuff too. They didn't play they didn't play in August. Um, you know, so like they sat out one of those games as protests. So I thought it was a cool angle, and I thought, hey, we might even get some Mariners to like maybe go on the record or like, you know, share their thoughts on all this. So I thought it was a pretty good idea. They basically said, you know, stick to sports. We don't want to get dragged into this. So I told that to Ty, and Ty was furious. And I think ultimately what would have happened, like we would have been fine, but it's interesting. It's nothing that Ty tweeted about, Black Lives Matter or COVID or nothing, like nothing political that got us fired. I'm pretty sure it was Ty tweeting out his pay stub for what Fanside was paying us. Um, and like immediately after that, I remember I was on the golf course because, of course, it was, you know, COVID. I was trying to learn something new. So I was golfing and I just got an email be like, you guys are done at Sodo, blah blah blah. And so it was shocking because I wasn't 100% aware of what was going down there. I was
Yep.
again, you know, I was at the course, so I wasn't staring at my phone. But yeah, it was pretty much Ty tweeting out our pay stubs. I think that got us fired. Little did we know that Fansided was about to get sued for unfair labor practices. So I wonder maybe that had something to do with it. Um, but yeah, and you know, if like a couple days later, like they tried to apologize to Ty and offer him his job back because like he was obviously not happy that he had been fired and I think they knew they screwed up because we were like, that's fine. We don't want to work for, stick to sports people anyways, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, we've never said stick to sports. And we
Yeah.
both forwarded them the email that says, it's literally right there, word for word, stick to sports. Like, we're not making that up. That's there. And all of a sudden they kind of changed their tune. But at that point, Ty and I had, kind of talked about it. It's like, it's not worth the money to, to, because again, like $100 a month was a good month for us at Fansided. Um, we're just like, it's not worth the money to sit here and be censored and be talked down to and all that stuff. So uh I it's pretty funny. Ty essentially was like ready to say goodbye, and just call it quits at that point. And I was like, well, do you want to like do a podcast tomorrow to explain what happened and see if there's interest for like a Patreon show? And that's what happened. We were fired on May 30th or 31st. The last day of May, I believe that's the 31st. And on June 1st, we did our first Patreon podcast and kind of explained what happened. And, there was just enough interest in a Patreon show to get us going, and the rest is history. So yeah, that's how we got fired and kind of stumbled into what we do now is Ty tweeting his pay stubs after Fanside had told us not to to cover sports in the middle of a pandemic in which no sports were happening, and they wouldn't allow us to cover the team the way we wanted to. And that's all kind of came together, and it ended up working out pretty well. Ty likes to say that, because I always joke with him that he got me fired. Ty likes to tell me that, like, yeah, but you only have your job now because of me. And it's like, I'm pretty sure we only have our job now because of me, because it was my idea to try the Patreon podcast and see what would happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a funny story. Ty probably has a different, you should have Ty on and have him tell that side of the story, see how much it differs from mine. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I know last time or when I first interviewed him to look at his background, it was more like, oh, why do you like the Mariners and blah blah blah. I
Mhm.
didn't really dive into the timeline of doing this now. But yeah, you kind of led right into my next point. Control the Zone is next. You guys still do Control the Zone on top of Locked On.
Mhm.
So that was born out of basically the necessity of losing your job. So yeah, with Control the Zone, kind of it's been a Patreon show, I believe, the whole time at this point. So um how important has Control the Zone been to you guys doing what you do now? It sounds like it's been pretty much the lifeline there to keep everything going to where it's at now.
Yeah, I mean, more or less. Again, like I said, it was when we were fired. We like, obviously we're not going to keep quiet about this. We're going to spread the word and all that stuff. And at that point, we had developed a decent social media following. Like, nothing like, we're not influencers or anything like that, but at that point, we'd kind of carved out a little notoriety in Mariner spaces. So we put out there that, like, hey, we're planning on starting a Patreon and all that. I think that first episode was free, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
That would make
and we,
sense.
we yeah, and we just ended up with like just enough people that it was like, okay, maybe we could build this into something at the time. And so yeah, it was, Ty actually got offered a writing gig at Lookout Landing, and was like, no, I don't really want to take it. Now, ask Ty if he wants to write at Lookout Landing, see what he has to say about that. Um, but yeah, so it was just one of those things where it's like, hey, like, should we at least try this, see if it works? And if it doesn't, whatever, and we'll just go our separate ways. And no, it was just enough. We also had a website to go with it. That didn't last long, because Ty was not interested in writing at all. So it was all on me again. And I just, I didn't have the energy to run a website too. But yeah, it was essentially, we wanted to continue to talk about the rebuild. We felt like there was a area there that um, not many of the established, Mariners related podcasts at that time. There was only one or two. Um, we thought there was room in the space for that, and we thought that because we were so heavily focused on the transactions and all of that and team building, that this might work and this might be a good shot. But so we started Control the Zone on June 1st of 2020. there wouldn't even be baseball games for another 6 weeks, 6, 7 weeks. So we always like to joke that, like, yeah, we decided to start a baseball podcast in the middle of a pandemic. And yeah, it turned out to be critical to where we are now, because it was consistent content. We were getting our stuff out there, and it was supplemental income, and it was nothing super serious. It was just like, hey, we can get basically replace our fan sided money, and we can do less writing and just more podcasting, which was what we wanted, which is what we'd like to do anyways, was the podcasting stuff more than anything. So we took a shot on it, and yeah, it turned out to be pretty big, and we're still doing it today. We're not a huge Patreon podcast by any stretch. I do think we're the second biggest Mariner specific Patreon podcast. Um, but yeah, and we're happy with where we're at right now, and it's nice, supplemental income and all that stuff. But yeah, it was absolutely critical, because not only did Ty and I just get better at podcasting, and not only did we kind of like define what our niche is, but we also like developed the chemistry that so many people seem to like, and all that stuff. And we also got to know each other just from recording, because again, like, you record a couple hour shows every week. There's really only so much baseball you can talk before you're just kind of talking in circles, right?
Mhm.
And so yeah, we started to learn about each other on that show, and I think that certainly helped with our building of our chemistry, and all that stuff, so that when we do talk baseball, there's kind of an ebb and flow, and it feels more like Ty and I are just like talking at the game, more so than trying to do like a professional podcast. Now Ty still likes to try to be very professional with the podcast. I'm much more laid back than he is in regards to that, which is why we will record a 2 hour Patreon show. And I'm sure today we recorded for like 2 hours and 15 minutes today for our Patreon show. My hunch is, if I went on the Patreon right now, that show would be under an hour.
Okay.
Ty likes to edit,
Yeah.
and so that's fine. But like, for me, the Patreon show has always been about just laid back and relaxed, and kind of, just invite people into our private conversations, essentially. And I think that did kind of help forge our style. It certainly got our name out there, and gave us some credibility when we went looking for, people to talk to who would give us advice, and were willing to hop on the show and all that stuff. So yeah, it was, nobody builds anything alone, and so we had some help along the way, and we had just, what we found is that, a lot of people were uh, very willing to hop on and just talk ball and all that stuff. So yeah, it just, you break down some barriers. You're not as nervous to ask. You shoot your shot, so to speak. And what we found is that people are pretty gracious with their time mostly, and they're willing to hop on and do stuff like that. So yeah, I would say the Patreon show, more than just, us putting out consistent content until we get to the locked on portion, like, more than that, it helped us define our style, both, what we wanted to talk about Mariner wise, and just how we podcast in general and how we interact. So it was huge stylistically. It was huge, not monetarily, but it was huge, like, professionally, I guess, that we had quite a resume at that point, when Locked On came calling. So yeah, it was one of those things where CTZ is huge. It's the most important thing Ty and I have done. We still do it today, and it's one of those things that, like, I don't know if it's ever going to get any bigger or not. I don't really think it's in our plans. If it does, great. But it's not something we're actively trying to make our bones on, right. But it did absolutely lead us down paths creatively, professionally, and just, down the path of our natural evolution of our friendship, that it's critically important. CTZ is everything, to the whole story. So yeah, it was huge, and we took a leap of faith. And I just want to say, for the record, it was my idea. So you're welcome, Ty. You're
There we go.
welcome.
Yeah. So, obviously this naturally leads into Locked On Mariners, which is where everyone who's watching, I would imagine, knows you from. This is where I found you guys when I was uh, wanting to become a Mariners fan and learn more about the team. So
Mhm.
pretty integral in that. So, did they find you from CTZ, or how did Locked On, I guess, find you guys and be like, hey, we want you guys to be the hosts of a Mariners show going forward?
Yeah. So, um, see, now this is where Ty will claim his credit. They had approached somebody else about being locked on. The old host was leaving. I believe his name was DC Lumberg. He was leaving, and they needed somebody. They asked somebody else, and he said, "No, I don't want to do that," because he had like an actual like career, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes, "But maybe you should talk to these two guys. I know them. They know ball. They've been podcasting a lot, and so I don't know if they ever even heard us like have a podcast. If they even heard our podcast ever." But they approached Ty and they asked Ty if he wanted to do Locked On Mariners, and he says that he told them that like I already have a co-host and I'm going to bring him on too. So that is where Ty will tell me that he got me the Locked On job, but in reality, if I hadn't kind of started CTZ and drug him along for the ride, he wouldn't have gotten the Locked On job. So technically, like I got us the Locked On gig, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
no, it was just we got lucky. Somebody had decided. Somebody said somebody had to back out. They went to somebody else. We had to be, asked, or we had to be recommended, uh, you know, by the person who turned it down, and we were uh, we were pretty excited. At that point, we were writing. I think both of us were writing for. Um, at the time, I believe it was called Seahawk Maven, which was like the Sports Illustrated Seahawks affiliated website. And Ty was actually like the co-editor of that. So he was very busy writing, and that was actually his full-time job for a while. Was the Seahawks beat, a job that I got him, by the way. Like I got him onto Seahawk Maven, and then the editor, because everybody likes Ty because he's more personable, I guess. He approached Ty about being like his co-editor or whatever, and blah blah blah. But we knew that he also did Locked On Seahawks podcast, and so we kind of knew a little bit about the network, and we kind of knew a little bit about like the pay structure and all that stuff. And it was just like, look, it's extra money to do what we already do. Like there's whatever. Like yeah, sure, we'll give it a shot. So yeah, I mean, we just got very lucky. We had networked pretty hard over the last couple years before we hopped on there, and they asked the right person, who said no, and that he recommended us, and apparently they asked Ty, and Ty drugged me along with him, and that's kind of the story. It was just kind of good luck, and it was preparation. What's the old saying? Good luck is when preparation meets opportunity or whatever. So yeah, it was a lot of good luck and a little bit of skill, and just kind of wormed our way in there, and that's how we got the gig.
Yeah, so now you guys are almost 3 years into doing Locked On Mariners, and you guys, I don't know if you still hold the title as the most subscribed to Locked On account on YouTube, but you're at,
No,
no,
no.
you got surpassed, so that's
Yeah, the
okay,
Mariners not doing anything this offseason really put a damper on us. But we're
probably.
behind Locked On Astros. So if you guys want to beat the Astros again,
There you
go
go.
subscribe to Locked On Mariners.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
agree.
yeah,
Yeah. So you guys are at 12.5K
yeah,
subscribers on YouTube, which you guys
mhm,
are the largest, at least on YouTube, the largest fan led Mariners content channel there is at this
right.
point. Um, I guess just how do you feel about the job currently, and what are some of the things you've learned most from doing it? And I guess another quick little thing too is just, can you believe that it's at the heights it's at now?
Um, I know I'm really talented, but yeah, I'm a little surprised at how well it's done. What's interesting about the YouTube portion of it is that I'm pretty sure Mariner Mojo is gunning for us right now,
You're only
which will
like
be
a couple hundred off.
which will be great for Colton and I don't know,
Josephine?
Jill or Justin maybe, I don't know, but
Yeah.
like it'll be great for those guys, if they can surpass us. But yeah, the interesting thing about the YouTube channel is that Ty and I did not want to do it, because for the first, like, we started in, I think, August 9th of 2021 was our first show. Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And starting like the following year in 2022, they were like, hey, we need to post on YouTube. Like you need to post your audio only podcast and the video podcast on YouTube. And Ty and I didn't want to do it because we were just like, we had seen what other locked on accounts were doing on YouTube. And there was, I think at the time, there was like two locked on YouTube accounts that had over 1,000 views or 1,000 subs. And I mean, it was barely like there were no big locked on accounts on YouTube. And so we looked at them like you have to have 1,000 to even be like, eligible to revenue share, right? Like
Mhm.
you need 1,000 to even get there. Now, what we tried to do is that I had my own YouTube channel that I made a while back for the website that I'd done that we had created, and we just never really posted to it. Blah blah blah. But I had posted. I made 4 or 5 episodes of a series called The Plan, which was just a video series about the Mariners rebuild. It's kind of like Rain City Redemption. If you're a Seahawks fan and you watch that, only not anywhere near as good as that series. But that was kind of the inspiration for it. And as a result, I had picked up about 1,000 subs. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to kind of like start at 1,000 and make my channel locked on. And they were willing to do it for a while. And then at the end of the day, they just made us a YouTube channel basically and was like, you're going to use this one. And so Ty and I did not want to do YouTube. We weren't interested. We would have to, get the camera set up and we'd have to change our setup and all that stuff. And even then, it took us a couple years to get into our new studios. Right. So, yeah, we were not big fans of the YouTube thing. And then, again, because we were more established than a lot of new people who start YouTube, we got to 1,000 pretty quick, but it was not something that Ty and I really like put a lot of effort into, honestly. And then I would say the day or the moment that Ty and I knew that like, oh, we were wrong. YouTube is a huge part of what we need to do. Um, it was the 14 game winning streak. Our numbers just exploded every day from that 14 game winning streak. And then a couple of weeks after that, they traded for Luis Castillo. And so we were doing huge numbers, and obviously they were hunting down the postseason and all that stuff, and they broke the drought and all that, and obviously the playoff games themselves did huge numbers, and relative to us, not like huge, like they didn't go viral or anything, but relative to us, they were doing we were looking at 5, 6, 7K views, and then like random we get a 12K view for the Castillo trade, and that was reflected in the money we were making, and so we're like, wow, we were wrong about YouTube. We should have we should have probably like dug in a little bit sooner onto this, but yeah, YouTube's been great. Um, and so yeah, I think the lesson from there is like sometimes other people have good ideas too. Now, not every locked on account has been as successful as us. Very few have in terms of the MLB division, but we're starting to see growth there across the entire network. And I just think it's part of the evolution of fandom, right? Like they like kind of the it's like an ESPN style show, only not as cartoonish, I guess would be the right word. Not as
Mhm.
arguing for arguing's sake. But yeah, so the YouTube thing is we got kind of dragged kicking and screaming there, and then once we really embraced it, like it took off for us. So yeah, don't listen to other people's ideas. There's some smart people out there. Um, and so yeah, we were able to make that work, and that was huge for us. And that's when we started to think like, hey, this could be something bigger than what it was at the time. So yeah, it's a little surprising from that avenue that like YouTube was so successful because we didn't think it was going to be. But yeah, it's also a little surprising that we've gotten to the point now where we're like how do I say this without sounding arrogant? Which I know people are shocked I'm saying, but like we're not. I don't want to say we're not like big deals. Like we're not right, but like in the Mariners content space, like we're up there, right? We're some of the more recognizable faces. We have some of the biggest followings, blah blah blah. I didn't think that was likely going to happen. And the nice, I think I don't like we're not responsible for it. I'm not saying that, but once we started to see success, we saw Marine Lair hop on, and we saw Mariner Mojo, and we saw a bunch of these other fan accounts and a bunch of these other like content creators start to come on, and the space just kept on getting better and better and better, and our numbers just kept on getting better and better and better. And there's a realization there that like there's plenty to go around here. Like we don't have to, hoard secrets or anything like that. Like, no, we share the wealth. We go on each other's shows, and the communities kind of started to build that way. So yeah, and from our personal numbers and all that stuff, not I wasn't expecting this at all. It's been great, to the point where you know we're it's our full time job. It's just podcasting now, and that's great. And we know it's not going to last forever, so we're just kind of enjoying it now. But it's great, and it's great that as we've kind of taken off, we've seen other shows and other content creators start to take off at the same time. And it would just be great if the Mariners could help us continue to grow instead of doing what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun to see like just the community in general grow, and then just to kind of track our growth over the last few years. It's been surprising, in pretty much all good ways.
Yeah, I think it's been really cool to see the I feel like I started watching everyone right when kind of everyone was starting to also do content, and then I came a little bit later. But you mentioned Marine Lair, Mariner Mojo. I'll put like Jay's Trident podcast in there. Like everyone, what's
Mhm.
great is everyone like does it differently though. Like no one is doing the same thing as everyone else, or at least is it doing it in different styles. So there's not
Yeah.
like clones out there where you're like, oh well, people really need to choose between this person or that person because they're doing the same thing. It's like everyone is different in what they do and how they produce the
Mhm.
content. But what I guess, do you have kind of an outside or a view of what the future might be for Locked On, for you and Ty, in general?
I mean, not really. It is tough to say, because like right now for me, the big looming threat is the 2027 lockout. Like I don't know how we survive that. If that's a year long lockout, I don't know how we do that. So that's kind of the scary thing right now. So for the most part, it's just Ty and I having fun right now. Scraping together enough of a living that we get to do this full time. And I think we're both pretty aware that like there's an expiration date on this. Particularly like Ty is married. If he has kids, like obviously, like life changes and things happen, and you want to buy a house and you need to get kind of more of a stable job, blah, blah, blah. Like, so yeah, I think I don't know where it's going to go. But for now, just having a lot of fun. I get to talk baseball with a friend every day. And so, yeah, I try not to think too far beyond that. Um, I think we could continue to do this if the Mariners like help by like winning on the field, and not being these money hungry barons just clenching dollar bills in their fists.
Mhm.
I think that would help us out a lot, and it would possibly explode the channel a second time, because it really was that 2022. It was the 14 game win streak followed by the trade deadline, followed by the playoff hunt, followed by the playoff wins, that really launched us and gave us so much momentum. And it raised the bar for us entirely. Like before that, if we did 2,000 views on YouTube for a video, that was huge. Now, if we do 2,000 views, that was a bad episode. Like terrible. We're disappointed when we get 4K in the off season, and so it's just one of those things where it's like that raised the bar for us, and we just don't know if that's going to happen again or not. This winter, we've seen a decline, in a lot of our numbers, and I don't think that's because Ty and I are getting worse at podcasting. That doesn't seem to be the consensus. It just Mariners aren't doing anything, right? Like they're just kind of sitting around and we're having the same conversation over and over again. And so I don't like, because we're reliant on a sports team to, be good and entertaining and exist. It does feel like there's probably an expiration date on it somewhere. So I don't really know where we're going to go. We're going to continue to do YouTube. Ty has talked about doing more short form content. So like TikToks, and we'll see how long that's around for. TikToks and YouTube shorts and all that stuff. But Ty talks about a lot of things that don't get done. So, we'll see if that ends up happening or not. But yeah, I think right now we're just kind of enjoying the moment we're in, the space we're in, having fun, talking ball, and at some point the ride will probably end. That'll be sad, but it'll be quite a journey. And so we're just kind of you know going as life takes us, and it's fun right now, and it's fun to see the community as a whole grow on top of it. And so, yeah, we're just trying to enjoy it. But I really don't have any idea like what the direction. Like, I leave that to the Locked On Network. Like they've got some kind of streaming thing on Amazon or Roku or something, and I just whatever. I skim the emails. Like it's not like I'm not going to get bogged down on like, oh, what if we end up on TV? I'm happy with where we are right now, and if the growth is organic, that's fine. Um, and maybe there is another YouTube idea that just comes and takes us into the next gear because, like I said, we really took off with YouTube. Um, it was just a good timing of YouTube videos being posted every day, and then the Mariners exploding in popularity. Maybe there is something like that that comes along and changes the equation yet again. But for now, just going to roll with what works, and we're having fun. And we the way it's set up right now, we're just going to be the podcast that gets mad with you guys,
Yeah.
and thinks the same things you does, but says it. It says them, and you know, still tweaking things. We're still trying to find things that work, things that don't. We're still introducing new segments all the time. We're like we've gotten some really cool interview. We got to talk to Jerry the last couple of years. I don't know if we're going to do that again this year, and so it's just one of those things where it's like you try things, they work, they don't work, you adapt or you get rid of them, and you just you have to have a conversation with yourself, and it's always about trying to get better. But I think it has to be a little bit organic if you're going to get better, because trying to force something usually doesn't work. And
Mhm.
so I'm not going to force. I get notes all the time from well-meaning people. uh, some work for Locked On, some are just in our comment section. I am who I am. I observe the game the way I observe it. Like, I'm not for everybody. I get that. But yeah, I'm not really sure where it's going to go, but I'm going to have fun while I can. And again, maybe there is another YouTube boom coming. I don't know. Maybe it's TikTok, right? Maybe it's the Roku channels, or maybe it's something else. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see where it takes us. But just having a lot of fun right now. Well, not a lot of fun right now because
Yeah,
again the Mariners won't cooperate, but like in general, we're having a lot of fun with where we're at right now.
of course. Yeah, so earlier I mentioned that I feel like you're one of the more polarizing members of the marriage community. You just pretty much mentioned it, like, you are who you
Mhm.
are. Some people
Sure.
like you, some people don't.
Mhm.
Particularly I would say your game day tweeting is pretty notorious at this point. So yeah, I would just say, like, do you feel people kind of get the wrong impression of you based off of
Yes.
either tweets or clips of the show, and kind of like how do you deal with that? Because it can be pretty negative, obviously, and I'm sure people have said some not great things either directly
Sure.
towards you or kind of indirectly. So go
Mhm.
into that a bit.
Yeah. So the game day tweets, what I always find fascinating about the game day tweets is that I get some variation of like calm down, it's a long season, or blah blah, it's one blah blah blah, like all the time, right? And what people don't get is that like when I'm tweeting, I am calm. Like if I'm not making a comment on something, I'm furious about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Like if I'm tweeting about it, it's like I've kind of accepted it and I'm like, that's stupid. Like I think if people like went to the game, because I basically like when I watch a game, I basically just say what I say, and then oh, maybe I'll tweet that, Um, but yeah, it is like I don't have any, difficulty understanding why people think I'm mad, when I say like, Julio, you can't get picked off and then smile in the middle of a pennant race. You hate Julio. And I'm like, no, I'm just stating a fact. Like, it's not a good look. Like, oh, I made a mistake. Like, and I noticed a lot more people reacting that way when he got picked off against the Yankees in September. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, we're trying to attribute tone through a text essentially, and we know how hard that is. So like I that doesn't really bother me all that much when people are like, do you even like baseball or anything like that? Like I get it. It's hard to attribute tone. Um, but yeah, no, like on the show, I get excited about stuff, and um, it's kind of like Bill Burr. How many people like Bill Burr? I hope a lot of people. But he has a great bit where he's like, I'm not yelling, like I am just passionate about my opinions, and I want you to hear all of them before you get a chance to speak. That's kind of what it is, So, yeah, but I'm not afraid to call stupid ideas stupid. Like I'm not trying to win popularity contest here. If you send us, an idiotic tweet and we read it, I'm gonna make fun of you. Like that's just what it is. Like we all say stupid stuff. Go through my Twitter timeline. You'll find plenty of stupid stuff. Like don't run from it. You accept it. You move on. You have fun. So I do think I'm a little misunderstood, but also, I don't care all that much. Um, and B, it's like, I think if you sat down and watched a game with me, you'd be like, oh, that dude just, saying what I think, but he says it, and all that stuff. So yeah, it's like it's not all that frustrating to be misunderstood or whatever. Because again, I'm not trying to get everybody to like me, and like Ty and I might have more success if I was, but Ty knows the drill, right? At this point, and
Mhm.
it's funny to me because every once in a while Ty will text me or we'll talk before the show the next day, and he'll be like, "I got like 3 DMs from people who told me I need to revoke your Twitter privileges," and it's like, do you think they think Ty like controls what I do on Twitter? So yeah, I do. One of the things that's like an unintended consequence of that is that uh, you know Ty gets asked to do a lot more stuff than I do. Now, to be fair, a lot of that is a comfort level thing for me. Like Ty interviews a lot of players by himself. I just don't care, like, what players have to say mostly because we can only ask them like certain things, and I already know their answer to that. And so like that's Ty's thing, and so I just feel like I'm in the way a lot of the time. But like, you know, Ty will talk to this guy and it's like, why didn't you do that interview with him? Like, I don't know what to say to that guy, you know. So yeah, I think there have been opportunities that Ty has gotten that I haven't gotten uh, because of my style or whatever. There's also probably things that Ty could have done if I wasn't around, but can't. I'm sure he'll make something up about like I could have called the fifth inning of game two if Colby wasn't, ranting on Twitter. He'll probably make something up like that. But yeah, and there is a lot of there is sometimes where it's like, huh, like all these other people are getting asked to do things. Like I know what Ty's schedule is like, and it's like, oh, like I could have done that. That would have been fun. And at the end of the day, it's just like I really like talking about baseball, you know?
Mhm.
And so, uh, again, I get it. There's some softening of like my style that could go down. Uh, but like at the end of the day, like I'd rather do the show and do the show that I want to do and just speak my truth than like try and change it too much for people. And there are times where clearly I'm like, okay, I went too far. Like
Mhm.
understand that, try and adjust that and all that. But yeah, for the most part, I'm pretty chill like during baseball games. And most of what I say is like said with an annoyed tone, not an angry tone. But that seems to be how it's interpreted. And again, based on my persona on Locked On, yeah, I'm not surprised. But
Yep.
again, it is what it is. I mean, you're not going to get everybody to like you. It's stupid to even try. And there's always trolls. Like no matter how good you are or anything like that, there's always people who think they know better than you. There's always people who think that they're smarter than you, and some of them are. A lot of them aren't. And I don't, I don't ever hardly read the comment section of any video we do. I just don't care.
Mhm.
It's just one of those things where it's like, I'm sorry that you're upset, but I didn't say anything bad, right? And so it's just one of those things where it's like, look, you have to understand that yes, there are, you know, you're probably losing people that you could have jump on the train and all that stuff. I would also say I'm probably getting people onto the train who wouldn't hop on if I was just, doing like the calm, like, oh well, everybody struggles and blah blah blah. Like, whatever, man. Like, I'm not going to change how I view the game just based on somebody's feelings. If I get new information and I get, I learn something, great. I will change my opinion on that. But just because somebody didn't like, that I said nobody cares about the Modesto nuts doesn't mean I'm not going to say it again and again and again. Like, just it is what it is. So yeah, I
Yeah.
do think sometimes like I've been miscast, I guess would be the word. But at the same time, every time I see somebody at the ballpark, like, hey, like the show and thanks, like it's nothing to it. Like it's not, even if people don't like me personally, they seem to like the show. And if they don't like me, they just keep to themselves. And that's great. Like that's totally fine. Like I don't have a problem with that. Again, I don't need everybody to like me. I hope everybody likes the show. And I know that not everybody's going to. But that's part of any kind of content creation. Somebody's not going to like your style and they might even try and talk smack to you. You just ignore them, they go away every time.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting you brought up how you probably missed out on some opportunities that like people would have invited you on. Because personally, I even talked to Ty about this off air on certain things when I've had him on and been like, yeah, I would really love to talk to Colby about stuff, but frankly, he intimidates me, is what I told
Yeah,
him, because I was
Ty
like, not
Ty's
only,
told me that before. He's like,
yeah,
you intimidate people, right? And I'm
yeah,
like, no.
well,
Because like if you met me, like I'm the least intimidating person in the world.
yeah,
I don't like confrontation. I'm like, I keep to myself. I'm pretty shy. And
hmm,
it's just like, no, people are intimidated. Like they don't want to ask you because they're afraid you're going to tell them off or whatever. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not rude. Like it just, whatever.
Yeah, well, and for me personally, like it wasn't necessarily so much your persona, like that was obviously part of it, but a lot of it too is just me being kind of more of a newer fan and not really, feeling kind of like that. There's that knowledge difference between me and
Sure.
someone who's been doing this for a long time. So I was like, okay, well, that intimidates me too. But that's why I think
Fake
like
it
that.
till you make it.
Yeah, I think this is kind of why this has been interesting to go into your background, because I feel like we, especially on Twitter, we just kind of see people at face value. You see tweets at face value, and
Right.
it's interesting to kind of see the human behind the content that you're consuming and who they are and why they do what they are and why they even
Right.
care to do what they are, because ultimately, like, we're all taking time out of our day to talk about a baseball team, or engage with fans and do
Mhm.
stuff, like fan fiction Friday and mailbag Monday and stuff, and be like, yeah, I'm going to interact
Right.
with, your takes. But um, before we get to the next point, just going to let you clarify a tweet that I feel like I've seen when people are anti Colby the most on Twitter.
Oh
They
no.
bring up the Jake Lamb tweet. So would you like to clarify that?
Oh,
Because that's
yeah.
always the like exhibit A for why you shouldn't listen to
Right.
Colby Patnode or something.
Right. Right. Totally fair, by the way. Like, yeah, that was dumb. But the difference between, like the people who screenshot that for like, power or whatever, like, yeah, I look at that and I'm like, yeah, that was dumb.
Okay.
Swing and a miss on my part, whatever, it happens.
Yep.
But essentially, you remember that they acquired Jake Lamb. It was the same deadline they got Castillo, and Gino was really bad for like 2 or 3 weeks, and the Mariners were in a decent playoff spot, but they didn't have it like locked up or anything like that. And I was just like, it's probably time for Jake Lamb to get some at bats over Gino. And of course, like a day or two after I tweet that, Gino homers and he makes a great play at third and he kind of goes on a run at the end of the year. And you're like, oh, well, sure. And that's just what happens. That's what happens when you don't react. You're proactive and you throw your opinions out there before the event happens. Like people, they like to Monday morning quarterback you. And by the way, it's nothing that I don't do. I Monday morning quarterback myself, and yeah, that was dumb. Like obviously, you go with the more established more established player, and Gino. I one thing that like I get like I get a lot of grief for is that like I attack fan favorites. And it's just like I don't attack anybody. I look at the player and what they're doing right now, and I make an observation based on that. except for Emerson Hancock. That dude just sucks. But yeah, it's part of the bit.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, that the Jake Lamb thing, yeah, that was dumb. But again, I said it before, and it's amazing how many people won't say anything until after they've been proven right, and then they want you to know that they were right the entire time. And it's like, I mean, maybe you were, but how would I know?
Yep. Everyone
So
everyone knew Garver was going to suck last year. Apparently,
yeah, everybody knew Colton Wong was terrible,
Mhm.
and it's just one of those things where it's like, no, you didn't. And I don't have time for that. So like I see people all the time, and it's just like I'm just going to mute you or block you or like because no, you didn't. No, you didn't. And
Yeah.
I don't have time for that. And people chasing clout for baseball predictions, like, nah, I'm not messing around with that. Like, you get a lot of things wrong.
Mhm.
Again, especially when you don't wait until all the facts come in, you get a lot of things wrong. Like you put a statement out there. When you're right, nobody cares. Stop talking about it. When you're wrong, you're an idiot. And it's just like
Mhm.
I'm fine with that.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So, next question for you, and this is just much more general, not necessarily specifically about you, but what's your message to Mariners fans prior to the 2025 season right now?
cry.
Suffer.
um, yeah, be prepared. I mean, like it's nothing you haven't been through before. Yeah, this is it's challenging because I think one thing that we should all acknowledge as Mariner fans, and oftentimes like the points get smushed together, and I think we can acknowledge that both of these things are true. And like whatever, like there's a lot of reason to be optimistic about the Seattle Mariners. They have Julio Rodriguez, they have Cal Raleigh, they have the best starting pitching in baseball. They have Munoz, Brash is coming back. They have Santos. The Luke Rayleigh exploded last year. Victor Robles came out of nowhere. Like, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about the Mariners. There's also a lot of reasons to be furious at the Seattle Mariners right now for letting this team and this opportunity just kind of wave in the wind instead of actually doing something about it. So I think it's one of those things where it's like if you don't want to see the whole picture here, you're going to end up being very angry and bitter about the whole thing. And while I understand that feeling, it's also baseball. Like it is just the best sport there is. And as annoying as the Mariners offseason is, they could still turn it around and have a really good offseason, as weird as that is to say. They absolutely could. But B, if they don't, should they be like mocked for that and blasted for that? Yes. Does that mean that you're a bad fan if you're excited to watch the Mariners play? No, it's a baseball game. It's a baseball team. So I think if you're a Mariners fan, I think the important thing here to do is relax a little bit. But I'm not going to patronize you and tell you it's just a game, right? Like obviously it means more than just a game to a lot of people. Uh, but I think at the end of the day, it's like, look, you can be mad and you can be upset and you can fan however you want to fan, unless you're, texting Mitch Garver's wife telling him, he should whatever himself. That's not fanning. That's being a psychopath. But like, if you just want to be mad the entire season, like do it, fine, whatever. If you just want to like stick your head in the sand and be like, nope, Cal Raleigh's going to hit 45 homers, everything will be okay. Like, fine, do it. But like, just accept the reality of where we're at. The Mariners, as they are right now, pretty decent team. And the frustrating part is that they could be a great team with just very little like effort put in by this ownership group. They could be a great team. And so I understand where we're at. And it's just like, I think you have to acknowledge both realities because what you don't want to do is you don't want to end up hating baseball. And it's just one of those things where like we get this question every time we do a mailbag or whatever, like, how can we as fans like protest this? And it's like, look, if you don't want to spend money on the Mariners, I get it. They haven't earned it. That's fine. But understand that at the end of the day, all you're doing is depriving yourself of baseball because you're not going to get ownership to sell the team by withholding your season ticket membership or by not watching the Mariners on TV. It's not going to happen. It's the unfortunate reality of where we're at, but that's the reality. So have fun. It's baseball at the end of the day. have fun with it. And if you're not having fun while you're watching baseball, stop watching. Like that doesn't
Mhm.
mean you're a bad fan. Like stop watching for a couple days and come back. You know what I mean? So just take a deep breath. Remember that at the end of the day, it is a baseball team. It is a baseball game, and that there are a lot of really good things about this club. But don't ignore the fact that that this club is being screwed by it's just finding that happy medium. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
between being upset and also being like, hey, we're 65 days away from opening day. Awesome. So I think it's just about finding some kind of balance as you get prepared to watch the 2025 Mariners, because there absolutely will be moments where you're like, this team sucks. They don't even want to win, blah, blah, blah. And there's probably going to be moments where you're like, this team could win the World Series. It's probably going to happen at some point. So, I think Brandon Warren, he's a fellow locked on. He does locked on twins. He's got a great quote. It basically is like, if you want to be a sports fan, you have to enjoy the journey because the destination sucks for all but one team every year. So yeah, I mean, enjoy the journey. Again, certainly be upset at the path they're taking and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, make sure you enjoy, just baseball
Yep.
in general being played in front of you. And enjoy it and fan however you want to fan, as long as you're not making it personal with the players. Do what you want to do. Have fun.
Yep. Yep. I definitely resonate with that. So we're gonna end this out. We've been going for quite a while now, so we're gonna keep it light. Oh, I accidentally muted my mic. We're gonna just do some rapid fire questions. I only have
Okay.
5 for you. So starting, favorite game you've been to?
The Cal Raleigh drought ender, the Rainmaker home run.
That makes sense. Uh, we already asked this earlier, so I was gonna say favorite Mariner of all time. So we'll switch this. What is kind of just your favorite place to either go to before or after a day at the ballpark?
Home.
Yeah, fair enough.
um, yeah, I like I said, I live a couple hours away, so typically when I go to a ball game, it's one day and I go back, or I go to a hotel.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's not an easy trip for me to go to the ballpark. But so that's changing now. So I'm pretty excited. I'm gonna be spending 5 or 6 days in Seattle early in the regular season, and I'll get to be like a tourist in a town that I've you know, lived near my entire life, and I'll be going to some ball games there and get to explore the city a little bit more. So I'm interested to learn more. I will say that like typically I do like to try to go to a Dick's Drive-In and get a
Mhm.
burger and a milkshake. That just always seems to hit.
Fair enough. Favorite ballpark food?
Oh, it's a hot dog.
Hot dog. And is that specific for T-Mobile, or are you talking just general?
Just in general.
Mhm.
I've only seen a Major League Baseball game played at T-Mobile. I did go to a World Baseball Classic game in Arizona a few years ago. It was USA versus Canada, I believe. I went to that game, but I didn't really get there. Most of the concessions weren't open. So, just in general, like a hot dog and a cold drink with a baseball game, like a 1 p.m. First pitch with a hot dog and like a Dr. Pepper, tough to beat.
Yep. So if you were hypothetically a major league hitter or a major league closer, what would be your walk up or walk out song?
This is Ty's question. Um, so we actually did this segment called Top Five Tuesday when we were still doing 5 shows a week, and one of the topics that the wheel could land on was top five walk up songs basically. And whenever I was spinning that wheel, Ty would take it off the board for me. Like he didn't want me answering that question. And it's because I'm not like a super musical guy, so I don't recognize a lot of songs and all that stuff. Like music's just not huge. I listen to podcasts and sports mostly. So,
Mhm.
but I will say that probably like I don't know what it would be for as a hitter. Although I do like Kelnick's Country Roads. That was pretty awesome. I'd
Mhm.
probably pick something the whole ballpark could sing, like Country Roads, if I was a hitter. I think that's cool. Pitcher wise, probably going some ACDC. Uh, Shoot to Thrill. It's probably my favorite song from ACDC. Um, I used to love when JJ Putz would come out to Thunderstruck. That's kind of the first like closer entrance that really stuck with me. But yeah, I mean, it feels like it's got to be AC/DC or Metallica or
Yep.
some kind of hard rock. So I'd probably say like "Shoot to Thrill" would be my closer entrance song.
Okay. And to end this out, I just want you to say one good thing about your co-host, Mr. Dane Gonzalez.
Um, he lives in Canada.
That's a good thing.
I
That's a
mean,
positive thing.
um, what can I say about Ty? He makes me feel better about myself by just existing.
Okay. Fair enough.
Um, well, so what the Ty is like much more like in tune with like professionalism with our podcast, and so he'll call me on stuff, be like, you can't say that, and it's like, oh, okay. So Ty for the most part pretty blunt, um, and yeah, so like I like also that like I can make fun of him and he doesn't take it seriously, and I know that sounds like me taking another shot at him, but like no, Ty is somebody I can joke around with, and I know that like he's not going to get super upset or mad or anything like that. And that's certainly makes it easier for me and my personality, just kind of relax and have fun with it. So yeah, Ty's very chill dude who also will call me out on things when it's like, dude, you can't say that. Like, we're gonna cut that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I trust his opinion on that. Like, it's never something like super negative. It's just like, probably shouldn't say that. I'm gonna cut that out. And it's like, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate you looking out for me. Even though it's probably selfishly looking out for him. Let's be honest. Ty's a pretty selfish guy.
Okay. Awesome.
His
Well,
wife is awesome. There you
there we
go.
go. Yep. Caroline.
Yep.
Yep.
He outkicked his coverage there. Good for him.
Of course. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come
Mhm.
on tonight and kind of just go over, who you are when it comes to the Mariners and the Mariners space. So I appreciate that. Any last words you have for the people at home that are still listening an hour and 26 minutes in?
Yeah, one thing you guys should know about me is I don't do brevity. So the short or the long podcast is not a surprise to me, and I always feel kind of bad about that. Like I don't like I did Casey Bellin. I did his podcast last week or so,
Mhm.
and like I know that most of his podcasts are like 25-30 minutes. I did an hour, and that was me trying to be brief.
Yeah.
And even now I'm telling you a completely unrelated story. So
I have that
so
same problem. My wife gets so mad at me because I'm like, oh, this will be 30, 45 minutes. And it's like an hour
yeah,
and 15 minutes later, I'm still recording.
yeah. So like I know like Ben Ranieri does like 15-minute podcasts, and like if he has me on, I'm like, oh man, I know you're doing at least an hour with me. So
Yeah.
it's like, but yeah, so like just in general, um, it's baseball. Don't sweat the small stuff, and have fun. Like at the end of the day, if you're not having fun talking about and watching baseball, like we kid all the time, like this isn't fun and like all that stuff. But really, like if you're not excited to talk about baseball or excited to watch baseball on that day, just don't take
Mhm.
a deep breath and walk away for a couple days and come back and just relax a little bit and have some remember to have fun. It's always a really important thing. And I would say this: if you are like new to the space or whatever, you're thinking about starting. Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to reach out. I think it's really cool that our content community is growing as much as it is, and there seems to be a lot of people building something pretty cool here. And the first step to anything is starting it. And so that's one of the things that kept me from doing this earlier than I was, just because didn't know where to start. But yeah, don't be afraid. Reach out. You might have to reach out a couple times because I don't always see all my DMs and whatnot. But yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to me or Ty or anybody. It's a very welcoming community. So if you're new to the space or you want to get into the space, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for some help because I think you'll find that this community is very much willing and interested in like sharing what knowledge that they've gathered uh, the short time that we've all been doing this.
Yep. I definitely agree, and I'll always say that everyone, I've had so many people on my show. I'm kind of like known as the community guy now at this point because it
Mhm.
just I've had so many different people on. Um so far no one said no, and like that's kind of what you need to know is like at least not to like a solo recording, like no one said no yet. And I've had just about everyone in the content space at this point. So, we're very
Just
welcoming and
it's
want
about
to.
finding a time that works, and
Yeah.
and all that. So maybe it's a no right now, but like, talk to me in a couple days. And so yeah,
Yeah. Doesn't
it
matter
is
how
a
small
very
you are either. I mean,
no.
Ty was my first podcast guest ever,
Mhm.
and I had like maybe less than 50 subs at that point. I maybe only had like 20 something, and he was willing to
I
come
mean,
on for like a couple
Ty will give it
hours.
away for anybody, but sure, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like, yeah, but yeah, no, it's a pretty chill community, and
Mhm.
I think people are pretty eager to help as long as you're as long
Good
as you're
person.
a yeah, good person, kind individual, and you're doing it for the right reasons. I think you'll find a lot of help and just advice and things like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I sure at some point Ty will do the whole thing on Locked On where we'll get other content creators on during spring training and just talk to them
Yep.
and try and help them out, like get some eyes on their stuff. Because again, guys, it's a very good time for like Mariner specific content creator stuff. It's booming right now,
Mhm.
and it is not nearly as inclusive as it was when it was just basically lookout landing in like what USS Mariner for a little bit. There was a brief overlap there, but for a long time it was just lookout landing, and that was like your only way in. Now it's wide open. You want to write articles, you want to do podcasts, you want to do videos, do it.
Yep.
Make your first one. Start. And don't be afraid to ask for help or ideas along the way because I think you'll probably find it in this community.
Yep. Absolutely. But that's going to be it for today. Obviously, Colby's stuff will be in the description. So, Locked On Mariners, you can go follow him on Twitter as well at CPAT11. So, go check him out. I'm sure if you're on here, you already know who Locked On Mariners are. So, there's probably not going to be many unique people coming to you, but still go check him out if you haven't. And then, obviously, leave a like, subscribe. It helps me out a lot and it's free to do. I would really appreciate that. But yeah, that's gonna be it for us now, and I'll see you in the next one.